Kendra, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate you hopping on board. I know my audience is going to love to hear from you and tell us all about everything that we need about money and finances.
Well, I'm very, very happy to be here. It's been a long time coming, so I'm excited. I'm very excited for
I
it.
know, right? So tell me a little bit more about you and kind of how you even got started with in the financial world.
I actually went to school for finance. So I'm one of those who like always knew what they wanted to do and always was kind of preparing myself for it. So I went to Clemson University. I went to college for finance with a bachelor's degree in corporate finance, a minor in accounting. And ever since I graduated, I was hitting the ground running in finance. So I was always in the corporate space. So I was always trying to do that, grind the corporate ladder and all of that. And so I did that for about 10 years, climbing and climbing and climbing. And then I was finally like, you know what am I climbing for? Like, am I just going to keep climbing? Like, what am I doing? So I kind of got bit by the entrepreneurial bug a few years ago. And actually, my first business had nothing to do with finance. It was a natural hair care line, actually. But
Interesting.
but I've always been in finance. It's my passion for sure. And so now I'm back in it again.
I love it. So, like, I know even though finance is your thing, like
Yeah,
entrepreneurship was something new for you. Like, how did
totally.
you manage that? Were you still working, or did you just quit and say, "Hey, I'm going
Yeah.
for it full force"? Or how did that transition for you?
So initially, I did it honestly out of boredom. Like my first business, my hair care line, I did it because I was working at GE at the time. I had this my full time job, but I had gotten how when you're at your full time job, but you have gotten the system down in a way that you can literally get like a week's worth of work done in like 3 hours.
Yeah,
And then you have the whole rest of the day to do nothing, but your
yeah.
boss thinks you're so busy. So I had all of this spare time. I'm like, God, like, I gotta do something. And everyone I knew was like launching businesses. So I had just went natural at the time. And so I was creating hair care products for myself. And then people were asking me about it. So I ended up selling it. So that's kind of how I got thrown into being an entrepreneur, like on the
Ah,
side.
ah.
Was just like making extra money, creating shea butter products, out of my kitchen. And but yeah, it was totally like an on the side thing. I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. I always thought like I'm climbing, climbing, climbing the corporate ladder, and that's what I was supposed to do. And did that on the side. Actually, that my hair care line it landed in Curl Box, which is like this monthly subscription box.
Yeah.
And when it did that, the orders really started to pick up. And now keep in mind, I was making all these products by hand in my kitchen on the side of my full time job. And so when the order started to pick up, I wasn't enjoying it. I was like, I don't like this entrepreneur thing. I don't like having to make the products myself and label them and ship them. But that's because I realized what I was doing wasn't something I was passionate about at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like hair care was not something I was passionate about at all. It
Mm-hmm.
just felt like it was something I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I quickly got out of that. I stopped. I went back into like focusing on corporate and my full time job. But then I realized like I wanted to have my own business and I wanted to do something outside of corporate, but I wanted to do something that I loved. And I sat back and I'm like, I love finance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love to do. I just didn't want to do it for these multi-billion-dollar companies anymore. I wanted to help the woman who's building her own empire. I wanted to help her manage her money. So that's kind of how I fell into the finance femme. Yeah, that's how I got into that. And the transition into that was, I mean, I didn't have my first client, I didn't have a website, I didn't have a name, a business name. Like I literally just ran into a woman who had a clothing store here in Dallas. And she was like, I need you to help me with my finances. And I was like, okay. And so that was like my first client, and that's kind of how the finance firm was born. It was born
Ah.
like organically. I had no idea that that's what I was really going to be doing, but once I got that little taste of it and I helped her, I was like, this is what I got to do forever.
Right, forever. That's
So
what I want to do. So you were still working when this
hmm
happened. So how did you juggle the two? Kind of having that as a side hustle, really.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm always very big on systems. So when I was, like I said, when I was at GE, I mean, I had a full week that I was supposed to be at work, but I would knock it down to one day's worth of real work, and then the rest of the days I was kind of doing whatever I needed to do for my business. It was the same thing when I moved here to Dallas. It was the same thing. My full time job I had here, they thought I was so busy 5 days a week. I was really working for them about one day, and the other 4 days I was working for clients. I would lunch breaks. I would go see my clients. I would go take calls. So it was not really that difficult initially because I just had like one or two clients and they were local. But then after a while, it started to become too much, and I didn't want to kind of sacrifice what I was doing for my clients you know, by going to my full time job. So at some point, I had to transition out of it, and now I'm full time entrepreneur. But initially, I was doing that for about a year and a half as a side hustle. Um, just had to kind of manage it between the day.
So I think, and I love that you said that. Like, what was it that made you finally say, okay, I'm done with full time? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people think like, okay, I can get a business and then I can just go ahead and quit my job. But
Right.
that's not how you do it, right? Because you're gonna be like, oh my
No,
god,
no.
I can't pay these bills. So,
Right.
like, what at what point was it a number, like an amount of money where you're like, okay, I'm making this amount of money, so it's okay for me to transition, or was it just a breaking point for you? Like, what happened for you to make
Yeah.
that transition?
And that's such a good point. It's such a good question. So for me personally, it just came down to the point where I was like, okay, I have this certain amount of clients now where I can manage it with my full time job. But if I literally got one more client, then somebody's going to struggle. And I don't want any of my clients, obviously, to struggle. And then I still have my full time job where I'm like, okay, I can't drop the ball there. So it came to the point where just time wise, it wasn't working. But here's the thing, and this is why I love that you said, like, is there a certain number as far as how much you're making and stuff like that? I think that that's something that is so important that
Yeah.
people need to understand that, if you don't have that money saved up and prepared and you're not ready to go to be a full time entrepreneur, then it can't just be, oh well, I don't have enough time to do my full time job anymore, so I'm just going to quit that and do this. Like if this isn't covering that,
Mm-hmm.
then you got to realize your time priorities.
Right.
So it is very important to understand that. But for me personally, like I did definitely save. I saved for many, many months, but I'm in finance, so it's like something that comes naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But for many people, it's definitely something you got to kind of get yourself into a rhythm where you're not necessarily making as much as your corporate job or your 9 to 5, but you're making more than your necessary monthly expenses.
So
So
how does
I
someone?
always tell people,
I'm
I'm sorry.
sorry. I'm sorry not to cut you off. How would someone determine that? Like, what's the steps they need to take to determine like what's the bare minimum that they need? Because some people don't know. They're just getting
Yeah,
that
so
check
true.
and paying bills, and it's working.
Right. It's a very good point. So if they sit down and write out, so I hate the term budget, but sit down and write out everything that you spend every month, from your necessary things like your rent or your mortgage to your cable bill and cell phone bill, those things, to the things that kind of fluctuate a little bit like groceries and all of, and just tolls and gas and things. List all of that out and see how much you actually spend on it. Now, some things are very easy to figure out, right? Your rent, your mortgage, those are pretty much the same every month. But groceries and spending money, you need to actually go look in your bank statements and see, month after month, pull 3 to 5, 6 months worth of bank statements and just look and see, what am I spending on average on, Starbucks and all of these different things. And now here's the kicker though, right? Just because when you have a full time job and a side hustle, you're able to afford $300 a month in Starbucks, that doesn't mean that when you become an entrepreneur, you're still going to be able to afford $300 a month. So you're
Exactly.
starting this list to see what you are spending, but expect some changes. Like the
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle is not going to necessarily be the same initially,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but to figure out what you need to kind of make in order to go full time entrepreneur, you definitely have to list out what your current expenses are each month. Think about those things that don't necessarily happen monthly. Some charges come quarterly, some come
Yeah.
annually. So list all of that stuff out
Mm-hmm.
and then just have a good idea in front of you. Okay, well, if I want to save 6 months worth of expenses, then that's going to be X amount.
Right. Okay. Okay. So when you starting a business, do you need no money, or can you start a business on like a really low budget? Like,
Yeah.
what's your take on that? Especially because a lot of my audience is either starting a business or they're
Right.
trying to build their business. Like, how do they start that?
I always say to start as lean as possible.
Uh-huh.
So, don't worry about the $8,000 custom designed website. Go get you, a $500 website or, even less. Don't. So let me first answer that question, then I'll go off on my other tangent. But
Okay.
um, definitely start as lean as possible. Don't go renting off an office space if you don't have clients yet. Like you don't need an office space. You can work from home. So as far as how much money you need and all of that, it really depends on how much money you have. But at the end of the day, even if you have $1 million in savings to start this business, that doesn't mean throw all $1 million into it. And so
Right.
you know that it's an actual sustainable and viable business that people out on the marketplace are really looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just
Right.
because you have this great idea and this great business and product, it doesn't necessarily mean people want it at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So don't invest all of your money into it. Um, from the get go, So just that's definitely my suggestion to that. And then you got to save up for it. You have to have some skin in the game when you're starting a business. You have to use some of your own funds and resources and change up some things. Like if you don't have a current office in your home right now, do you have a spare bedroom? Make that spare bedroom your office.
Right.
Like you gotta shake up your life a little bit when you become an entrepreneur at first because it's not just as easy as you know Instagram makes it seem
Right.
sometimes.
And I think that a lot of people get blinded by that because they just see it on Instagram, but what you're seeing is the pictures that they want you to see. You're not
Right.
seeing all the other stuff that, everybody
Mm-mm.
goes through. You don't really get to see that part, right? And I
No.
love that you said that is something that people want. A lot of my clients will come to me and say, well, I feel like I'm like the Olivia Pope of like online businesses. I think that should be like my new name, right? But a lot of people will come to me and like, oh, I'm not selling this. This is not selling. Is
Right.
it something that I'm doing? What am I doing wrong? How can I market myself better? And then so I'll go back and say like, does your audience even want this? Because a lot
Right.
of times people think in their head, oh, this is a good product, or oh, this is awesome. But if they don't want it, you've invested a lot of money into something that maybe
Yep.
people don't want. So you have to like kind of switch your business plan or whatever that is. But I think
Yep.
that's so important, like what you said. So if someone wants to start a business though, could they start on no money? Like, is that ideal, or do you think that they should be vested some type of way, like with
I
something?
I definitely think that you can start a business with very 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 little money. It's possible, and you can kind of barter your way for a couple of things. And if you need a website and maybe you do some kind of service, you can maybe barter a website. But I don't think that it's ideal to start with zero money because you're probably going to put out a product or a service that looks like it started with zero money. So you want to invest a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I always say people have time, people have money, but you never have an abundance of both. So you have a whole lot of time, then maybe you can spend a little bit less money. But generally speaking, you have to be able to invest and willing to invest a little bit of both to get that thing, whatever it is, off of the ground. So, it doesn't necessarily have to always be in the things that people think that it should be in, though. So many people want to spend all of that money on that website and those business cards and those things like that. And it's like, guys, like, make sure that you have, your business established and everything first before you go out there and spend all that money on some of the things that aren't necessary from the beginning. Because, like I said, I didn't have a business name. I didn't have a website. I didn't have a business card. I didn't have any of that when I got my first couple of clients because it was literally like, I don't even know if this is what I want to do.
Right.
So let me see if I even like this
Mm-hmm.
first. And then once I realized that I loved it, yeah, I went full force with it. But you kind of got to test that out first before you just put all your money in that basket.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, so do you think it's ideal to start a business account, or should people just hold money over to the side until they're ready? How do
Yeah.
you how should someone approach that when they're starting out, or even when they're already in business? Should they
Yeah.
get a business account?
So I always say that if you are spending significant, not significant, but if you are spending consistently on your business, or if your business is already consistently giving you money, if you have clients or customers, then you need to open a business account. So it takes very little money and it takes really very little effort. I mean, as long as you open up your LLC, or you can even start up as a sole proprietor, as long as you create your separate business entity
Hmm.
and then go to the IRS.gov and create a free